It's now my very great pleasure to introduce to all of you Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat from the state of Arizona. I'm sure Senator Kelly doesn't need an introduction to this room, but just for the sake of confirmation, Senator Kelly has served his country from on sea to outer space, naval aviator, 350-odd carrier landings, several space missions, last commander of Endeavour. On the weekends, he enjoys reading, spending time with his grandchild when he can get home, and riding his mountain bike. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Kelly.
I don't know where that mountain bike thing came from because I don't have a mountain bike, but I used to. It's what? Is it really? I know the guy who maintains my Wikipedia page. I need to give him a call about that. And on the aircraft carrier landing thing, last weekend, I took my granddaughter, who's 4, down to the Naval Air Station at Patuxent River. We're in a simulator, an F-14 simulator. I'm an A-6 pilot, but I can figure that out. I was a test pilot. I was trying to land on the ship in the simulator, but I had her sitting on my lap. I think it's hard at night, with a mission, after a long mission, but it's really hard with a 4-year-old sitting there between you and the stick. So I was not successful. But good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for giving the opportunity to speak with you today. It's an honor to join this forum once again, particularly alongside New America. One of the founders is a good friend of mine, Ted Halstead, but also obviously from the involvement with ASU, two institutions that continue to push boundaries and help us try to think about innovation, technology, and the future of national security. Today, I want to focus on 3 things that sit at the intersection of defense policy and technological transformation, which is AI, defense modernization, and the need for consistent federal appropriations to fuel defense innovation, which is probably a timely topic as we face the potential at some point of a 1-year CR, which would not be good, especially for the Defense Department and our national security. We're living in a time of incredible change. Artificial intelligence is moving incredibly fast. It's reshaping our economy. It's reshaping our national security. It's changing how we work. And even for a lot of folks, young folks especially, how we learn. AI has been equated with as disruptive as electricity was in the 20th century. Before and after electricity, things were much, much different. Everything changed. The way we worked, the way we lived, socialized, did business, even interacted on a daily basis, all changed after the advent of electricity in homes and businesses. And I think AI is going to be rather similar to that, or it could be. It's powerful, it's promising, but we got to get it right. And it could be one of the greatest drivers of prosperity across the world. That's a possibility. But we could also screw it up. There are real risks when technology moves faster than policy. And because of dysfunction in Washington, it often does. We've seen this throughout our recent history. But what happened in the 20th century, it took average Americans getting abused by power companies, especially during the Great Depression, with regards to their electricity and the availability and the costs. And then what happened was the government got involved and regulated it. We've seen that over and over again, that pattern. We've seen it with social media now, and we certainly have fallen short and have not done enough, and still need to act, and we're trying to take some steps once again on that front. But I think AI could redefine the future of work, leaving some people without a clear pathway to having a job, any job. I was with the head of AI for, it was either Microsoft or Google about 6 months ago. And we were talking about white collar jobs and those jobs being replaced. And this guy said to me, he said, give us 5 years and we're going to have all this stuff figured out, all the mechanical stuff. And then those jobs are at risk as well. And then there's the infrastructure side of this. The infrastructure that we need to support AI data centers is going to be a real strain on utilities. Their ability to generate the power supply and also the water that these facilities need for cooling. And this could raise the cost for families and small businesses. I asked this question today, and one of the committees I'm on is Environment and Public Works. And we had the nominees to be on the board of directors of the Tennessee Valley Authority. And I want to know what's their plan. Because if the demand goes up and the supply doesn't, what are you going to do? You're going to stick it to families in the Tennessee Valley? Are they going to have to pay for all this? Are you willing to do something like maybe different, make a different rate, a separate rate payer for data centers, that they're their own thing and they're going to pay more and they're going to absorb the cost? That is something that we could do. I recently put out a framework on this called AI for America to put out some possible solutions to many of these challenges. And it starts with a simple idea, and that is that if companies are going to make billions of dollars building AI tools off of American infrastructure and off of American talent and our innovation, well, then they should help strengthen the very foundations that made all this possible in the first place. Meaning they should pay for it. Now, they're not going to let you laugh because they're not going to like that, right? We've got some feedback, mixed feedback, not too against it. Some of these companies are generating tremendous revenue already, on the order of like $50 billion a year. So we want to see AI companies contribute to training the workers for tomorrow. Mid-career people that are out of job, what are they going to do next? So let's give them training so they have opportunities. And maybe there are going to be jobs in the future that we don't even envision today that will exist. We'll need to train people for those as well. But we also have to strengthen our power grid. The demand for electricity is going to skyrocket. Right now, today, it's about 6% of the power on the grid, or the energy that's used each year. 6% goes to AI data centers. By the end of the decade, that's going to be 12%. It's going to double. But in some areas, like Maricopa County, where Phoenix is, they've got to go from about 16 gigawatts of available power to, they think, around 30 to 32 in 5 years. Now, it took them about 130 years to get to the 16. Now they got to double it in 5 years. It's going to be really, really hard to do. And who's going to take on that burden of paying for all this? I don't think it should be just the taxpayers. It should be the companies. But beyond just strengthening our power grid, we've got to make sure that this sets up our children for success and doesn't make them less safe and less secure. And it's also extremely important as we look into defense and the security space, and that goes beyond our borders. AI is going to be a key factor in any future security cooperation deals that we do. It's incumbent upon us to share with our partners and allies not only the technology. By the way, if we do not share this technology with our allies, you know who's going to share their technology with our allies? China. And there's sort of a race here in what does the world adopt? Do they adopt our way of doing this? Or do they adopt the Chinese way? Somebody's going to win and the other country's going to lose. I think we want this to be us. But that means we're going to have to share some of this technology, maybe sometimes in a way that doesn't make us completely comfortable. It's also important that we get the policies right. Sometimes they do not hit the mark. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, I think we also need to talk about the foundation of future warfare and the foundation of gathering intelligence and the foundation of logistics, AI is transforming everything from decision-making on the battlefield to predictive maintenance. Somebody sent me a tweet that some admiral or general put out that said before making command decisions, somebody may have seen this, they check with AI. That was kind of scary. I thought maybe it was made up, especially considering who sent it to me. But it did actually look kind of legitimate that they're running decision-making already through AI models that don't belong to the Department of Defense. But I think all of this makes us, it's important that we confront some deeper questions about decision-making, but about ethics on the battlefield and about the human role in combat decision-making. Do we want algorithms, large language models, do we want them to be making decisions about killing people? I could tell you this, our adversaries aren't going to have a problem with that. But I think there should be boundaries to what is morally and ethically acceptable for us to do. And I think we still need the human in the loop before we make decisions on whether to kill people, even when they are our enemies. So our challenge is going to be, how do we strike a balance between speed and responsibility to harness AI's power without making mistakes that could get Americans killed or could even start wars? AI might be the shiniest object when it comes to the future of defense. I think it clearly is right now. It's in every discussion. I was at this forum in Aspen a few weeks ago, and not once did anybody mention cryptocurrency. And we probably had like 6 panels, and somewhere in there, I think 3 of them were about AI. The other 3 turned into a conversation about AI. Not once did anybody talk about crypto. But there are also other things when we think about the future of defense. There are a lot of other pieces that we have to get right in order to make sure that our country is safe and secure. The U.S. defense acquisition system, it is unwieldy, it is cumbersome, and it can't adapt to an ever-evolving battlefield. It's been unable to adapt. Now, this system sort of works if you're the sole buyer trying to build tanks or airplanes or warships. It kind of works. But I'll tell you this, it fails miserably if you're looking to acquire cheap and expendable systems in mass. It fails. And the example that always comes to mind is drones. On the battlefield in Ukraine today, drone innovation is happening at a breakneck pace. I was in a drone factory in March, underground. I even got to help make a drone, put a little message for Vladimir Putin on the outside in a Sharpie. But I got to work on a drone a little bit. They're innovating almost daily. That doesn't work for the way we acquire weapons and weapon systems in our country. It just doesn't. Change orders will bankrupt us. We'll buy a single drone and it'll cost $1 billion if we allow that to happen. So we need to make some changes. We need to allow the services the authority to purchase expendable systems and the latitude to update these systems as conditions on the battlefield change. And they are changing rapidly in Ukraine. We're just talking about artillery here in Ukraine. It used to be they would, shoot a huge number of artillery rounds every day, and they still do to some extent. But this war is now about FPVs. It's about drones. I was in a Ukrainian hospital meeting with injured Ukrainian service members. Out of the 10 guys I talked to, all of them, by the way, amputees, some multiple limbs, one of them missing both of his eyes. With one exception, there was one guy that stepped on a mine. The rest of them were hit by drones. Nobody by artillery. So we've got to figure out, how do we adapt our system to that kind of cycle of innovation? I've talked to some defense leaders about this. This is hard. because it's not the way our contracting works. And if we can't keep up with this technology, we're going to be at a significant disadvantage. And then part and parcel to this is the defense industrial base's ability to even produce these systems. The ability to rapidly manufacture drones is not just something we in the United States is postured to do right now. We also don't have the parts. I was joking with a Republican in the House at a dinner one night. You know, if neither of us were in this job, me in the Senate and she in the House, we should start a brushless motor company to make little brushless motors for drones, because there isn't one in the United States that can produce those motors at the rate that we would need them produced. We got to buy them. Right now we buy them from China. And in a conflict with China, along with everything else that they're going to cut off to the United States, including their 5,500 ships that travel around the world, bringing goods all over the place, including to the United States, they'll cut that off. But they'll cut off the supply of things we need in our defense system. And right now, we don't have another option. In Ukraine, officials there say they have a capacity to produce about 4 million drones annually. That's 333,000 or so per month, if I got the math right here. Compare that to what we can do, it's just thousands per month. And you see how we have a big issue. We got a big problem because this is a part of the future of warfare. Now, I will say that warfare on the ground in Europe is going to be different than a war against the Chinese in the Western Pacific. But I think these unmanned systems is still going to be a big part of how how operations are conducted. It's going to be a different kind of drone, different kind of warhead, different systems. And we face persisting concerns about outdated capabilities and the ongoing struggle. And this is a struggle for us where we've got to balance stockpiling and investing in modernization. We don't produce enough drones now because we don't really need to. I mean, think about that for a second. We would like to have the capacity to do it, but we don't want to be making a bunch of drones and sticking them in a warehouse. And then in a year, they're out of date. And we're not going to want them. They'll be obsolete. But what we need is the manufacturing industrial base so we can turn it on when necessary. But we can do this with our partners. About a month ago, I had a meeting with President Zelensky about this was one of the topics. He's like, why don't we partner on this? Help us build the capacity to go from 4 million drones a year to 10. And then we'll have that in Ukraine. Now, I know that's not having a factory here, but maybe we can make some of the parts here, ship them to Ukraine, and we could do this jointly. And they can continue to innovate. And they would have the capacity to crank out 10 million a year. And if we needed that in the future after this conflict is over with the Russians in Europe, we would have the capacity to generate what we need. So I don't think we can assume that the surge can just happen during a crisis. I think this needs to be a collaboration with our allies. Ukrainians are really, really good at this right now. And this could be a win-win for both our nations. And it's good for us to continue to work with our allies. I've had the same conversation with Al Carnes, who is in the British Parliament, who is the head of their defense committee. He's not the defense minister, but they want to be involved in collaborating with other nations on building unmanned systems. Now, all of this depends on one crucial factor, and that's the key to be able to maintain that industrial capacity that I mentioned and ensuring that a rapid innovation cycle is possible. But every time we face a government shutdown or operate under a continuing resolution, one that extends for a year, we slow that cycle down and we fall further behind. It interrupts contracts. It delays research. It sends mixed signals to innovators and to manufacturers that we depend on to stay ahead. It also sends a signal to our adversaries that we have a dysfunctional government. It's not the way we should be doing business. Government shutdowns and CRs prevent the Department of Defense and industry from planning long-term, from investing in new production lines, and from training the skilled workforce that modernization demands. And our adversaries, they're not going to wait for us to get our fiscal house in order here in Washington, D.C. And we cannot afford to operate at a pace that has so much uncertainty built into it. So if we want to outpace our competitors, we have to match our strategic ambition with fiscal reliability. We need predictable funding, consistent authorization, and sustained commitment are what transform innovation from a concept into a capability that can work on the battlefield. And that's what I think will keep America and our allies safe and secure. So these three themes, AI, modernization, fiscal reliability, they are all connected by a single thread here. And that's the need for agility in a world that is changing rapidly. The nations that can innovate quickly, that can sustain their industrial base and maintain steady, predictable investment will not only lead in military strength, but also global influence and economic strength. So as we look ahead, I hope the conversations that you all have today help us think beyond just the near term, but we need to start thinking out 10, 20, 30 years from now. I know our adversaries do that. We need to do it as well. And then we need to have the partnerships around the world, the allies we can work with, but also policies that will define the next generation of security. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.